Welcome to All Things Possible TV. I'm Kris Barney and I'm thrilled to have you here with me today. We're going to be talking about, are you listening to and acting upon your higher self? Are you really taking into action in your life those promptings, those feelings, those things that you have? We're going to talk about some things and I'm going to tell you some stories. Today is all about being raw and real after a really big weekend and a few days of some really scary, tragic things going on. And I just want to talk with you about, are you listening and are you taking action and making those choices so that you can act upon it? So much of the time we second guess ourselves and we have questions, and I want you to join me for this whole episode so that you can really see some different things. I'm going to give you 3 or 4 different examples of how listening has really changed my life and made a huge impact and difference, and that I've been able to be there and have those last moments and those conversations when I would have missed it had I missed those promptings. Before we get into that, I want to invite you to join me on our website and get the 7 traits. There's a 7 video series there for you for free. So right here on the bottom, allthingspossible.biz. Again, that's allthingspossible.biz. Join our community, All Things Possible, and be able to get those traits and have them impact your life. I put the traits together, from experience, not from, oh, this person said this and this person said this and we're going to combine it all, but actual experience of me living these traits and making an impact when life was really tough and when I had to move forward myself and not stay stuck. So get the traits and move your life forward. So let's jump into this episode. I don't want it to be super long, but I do want to talk to you about the different things that we have going on. So when I talk about your higher self, that's totally different for every person. That can be your gut intuition. That can be, a gut feeling. That can be an intuition. That can be inspiration. It can be from a higher power or a higher source to where you feel guided and inspired. It can be that this prompting has come and it almost sounded like a voice to you, or this idea popped in your head. There's a lot of different ways for you to get information, and I really feel like we can call that from our higher self. Some people want to call it spirit, some want to call it soul. I want you to determine what you hear, how you hear it, and be able to differentiate what that is when it's coming in. I want to give you a few examples. So I want to talk about yesterday. This has been building for a while, and when we're willing to listen to those and really act upon it, we can have a different experience. So let's back up and let's talk about a couple things that happened before yesterday. So this whole last 3 or 4 days, there was a big, huge one time a year event by a dear friend and colleague of mine. I've rarely missed her event. And for some reason, I kept getting the prompting of, no, you're not supposed to be there. No, you're not going to go. I had several people asking me, and as a speaker, I knew several of the speakers really well, if not all of them. And they're dear friends, so it's supporting other speakers and kind of interesting to not be attending this event. And it wasn't a matter of money. I had a great deal to be able to go. It wasn't a thing that I had something else scheduled. In fact, I had put this event on my schedule months ago. And yet I still kept feeling this prompting of, no, you're not going to be there. You don't need to have that on your schedule. And because of all that had been going on, I was like, okay, I just listen. I just know. In fact, you'll see a little bit different get up here. I'm just totally comfy. I'm headed back to the hospital to see my dad, and I'm also headed to the canyon for a big family get-together that was already planned. So as I've got all this stuff going on, okay, I was supposed to be at this event, but I wasn't, right? And we had a last-minute surgery on my son. So Friday, I ended up in the hospital, which would have been yesterday for those, day before yesterday, for those who are trying to really put this timeline into effect, but it would have been during that event. And my space was open. I didn't have appointments that I couldn't reschedule, but this last minute surgery came up for my son. He's single, so I went with my son to have this surgery. Due to some different complications, it took a lot longer. It was supposed to be fairly quick and easy. It took most of the day. We got home later that night, and so later Friday night, and he needed to be in recovery on Saturday. He was flying out Sunday to go to a job in Chicago. So he kind of needed these couple of days to have me take care of him and him be here, and a lot going on. So I get up in the morning after surgery, and I have this prompting that we should go see my father and my mother and go visit because he's leaving. And I said, okay, I got the message, right? Again, had I been at this event, I wouldn't have had an open schedule. And had I not scheduled that event to be on my schedule, I wouldn't have kept my schedule open. It's the only open weekend I have the whole month. So I get this prompting, and I just happened to mention to him, said, hey, you know how we're doing this big get-together on Sunday as a family for Grandpa? And a little history there. My father has been going through some really difficult times with his health. He's 80 years old, and he's been struggling with some cancer, and just got to the point where they've decided to just end treatments. He's done. It's terminal, and just make him comfortable. It's not necessarily quick. He could have several months, but it could be very fast. We don't know. So we'd kind of already had this chat about that. So the family was like, oh, it's Grandparents' Day. Let's go up the canyon. Let's take all the grandkids and everybody, and let's spend some time. So after I have this prompting in the morning and say, I need to go, down there, and do you want to go visit before you're gone? He's gone for 2 weeks on travel. And he's like, we'll see. And then I get on a phone call. A few minutes later, off the phone call, he comes in and he goes, Grandma and Grandpa have had a really rough night. I feel like, maybe we should go. And that maybe that's what I need to do rather than stay here and rest. And I said, I think you're spot on. So then I called my mother and got this story from her. And it had been a really rough night. They'd had a couple of falls. She couldn't get him up, those kind of things. But at this point, she'd gotten him up. Things were settled. And I just said, we're coming down and bringing your lunch. And he doesn't eat very good right now. I'm getting his favorite from the restaurant right there. And she was trying to say no. And I just said, Mom, we're coming. And, it's just me and my son Blake, and we're just going to come. And I was at that point still in my jammas. It was Saturday. I had 100 things on my list, just like you would have on your list, right, on a Saturday. And you're only one in town for the whole month. So in 15 minutes, I had thrown a hat on my head, thrown some makeup on, changed clothes, and out the door we went. Stopped by the restaurant, picked up his favorite lunch, and as we pull into, they own a home in a retirement community. As we pull in, there is a fire truck and an ambulance outside of their home. Now, did I listen? Yes. And did it make a huge difference? You know what? I couldn't really help that fire department, but I was there to support my mother and to support my father through this. It came down to a lot of problems. He is septic. He was very, very sick, and that's why he wasn't able to use his limbs, and that's why we're having the falls. But at that point, my mom had to enforce there's a DNR on him. And that was a really tough thing for her. A really tough thing for anyone, right? DNR, do not resuscitate. And when the ambulance crew is saying, okay, does he have a DNR? Does he have this in place? We need proof of this. She was going, DNR. She didn't even realize what they were asking because of all that was going on. So my question to you is, are you listening? Had I been 5 minutes later, I'd have missed being there to help her through that process. I mean, obviously there was the ride to the hospital and everything else, and a whole day at the hospital, and I'm going back now. It's not good. But I would have missed that opportunity. So would my son. And it would have been a lot easier to say, you're recovering from your surgery yesterday, let's lay here on the couch and be lazy. But we listened. Okay, back up with me. Many years. My oldest son is 9 years old, sicker than sick. Been diagnosed with strep throat, had all the symptoms, but still sick. Got down to the nitty gritty, and doctors said, we just think it's probably migraines, but we don't know. We don't really know what to do with him. Okay, I couldn't take that for an answer, and mother's intuition, gut feeling, inspiration, whatever you want to call that, I listened. And I fought till we got an appointment the next day to have an MRI. By the time he was in that MRI machine, he had a brain tumor the size of a lemon. He had so much water on the brain, he should not have been alive. They told me after that 30 minutes to an hour, and we probably wouldn't have ever gotten to wake him up. Are you listening? And it's not just about touch and go for life and death. You know, back up 4 years ago when everything kind of changed in my life, we switched some companies around, my kids all left home, and I no longer had the urgency to, you know, be at home and take care of kids and sick kids, and the other companies were running on their own. And I had this big urge, or awakening, or nudge, or inspiration, whatever you want to call this, that there was something bigger for me to be doing. That's when I really turned and started speaking professionally and mentoring and training and working with people and changing lives. That was a huge time that I had to listen. So in your life, I want you to really look at, are you listening? Because it's easy to discount those things that we think. And it's easy to second guess or be like, oh, see, I know I was right. I shouldn't have gone. Okay? Even with this simple event that I had planned on going to, but then felt like, don't get a ticket, don't go. It's, had no idea why, yet after the weekend, I wouldn't have been able to attend one piece of it. And I don't feel like it was about not spending the money. I know it was about being where I needed to be, making it a priority, being with my father, being with my son, being a support for my whole family, and being able to help out where it was needed. So much of the time we discount these things and we don't take action. We don't really move forward, and we wonder why our life's staying the same. And yet, are we listening? Another quick example for you. Years ago, I was driving home and I got into the turning lane to turn to go to my house. That road came, it was the fastest route to my house. And right as I'm sitting there at the stoplight to turn left, I get this feeling that I should not go down that road. I should take the next one, which is out of the way. And I kind of like, what's up? I don't know why. So I look in the rearview mirror and I recognize the lady behind me as a neighbor on the way to my house. And I like kind of wave at her, and I got out of the turning lane and got over and went down the next road. Now, it was out of my way, but I've learned to listen, right? The lady behind me, in the car behind me, going down that road right after we left that stoplight, was hit by some kids that were messing around, driving too fast, out of control, and was in a head-on accident. She lived, but she lived with a lot of problems. She had a lot of injuries. And would that have been me? I don't know. I don't wish that on anyone, but I know that the car right behind me was the one they hit after I moved out of the turning lane. So I want you to recognize that once you start learning and taking action to listening to that and recognizing it, and more times than not, you actually start to see it happening in your life. A lot of the times we want to just be like, oh yeah, I felt like this, so I did it. Well, that's great. You're listening and taking action without recognizing that that's what you're doing. But how many times are you missing the memo, right? And what could you be doing differently? How would your life be different if you were listening more regularly? And would you avoid some of those red flags? Right before my twin brother passed away, 2 weeks before, I felt like I needed to talk to him. We were very close, but we were both married, 4 kids, had our lives going. But we had a very long conversation 2 weeks before he died. And I know that even after a suicide death, you feel the guilt, you feel like, oh, what could I have done? I did go through that like everyone else does, but I know it's not to the depths that it could have been, because I did listen, I did make that phone call, we did have that long conversation. And even though I felt like he hadn't told me the real truth in that conversation, I always felt like there was something more I could have done had he been a little more forthright with exactly where he was at, I do know that I had that conversation with him and that we had a discussion and that I was able to let him know how much I loved and cared about him. And I don't feel like I didn't have that opportunity. So are you taking advantage of those times that you get that nudge? Are you listening to hear that prompting, that voice that you should do this? Are you willing to take action? When I changed paths and started down this trail, public speaking can be really scary. Yeah, I had done quite a bit of it at that point, but it wasn't what I thought I would ever be doing, would be a public speaker, right? And are you willing to take that action? Because really, yesterday it would have been really easy to have stayed home for another 30 minutes or been like, I can't go without a shower. I need to make sure everything's in place. No, I threw a hat on my head, a little bit of makeup on, and took off because I just felt that there was that urgent need to get down there and take him some food and help my mom, help out because they were really having a rough day. And when I get there, there's an ambulance and a fire truck. And I was there to be able to work with the ambulance crew and help get him out and be able to tell him that I loved him and to make eye connection with him and let him know that we were there and supporting him and helping him, and that also I was there with my mom so that he knew she was good as well. I just want to encourage you to get really focused on what does that intuition sound like? What does that inspiration look like? What does that nudge? How is that gut feeling affecting you? How can you do your life differently and be more aware of what's out there for you and what's going on? How could you do your life different? How much more could you be in tune with your higher self? And what is your higher self for you? You know, for some people, there's God, there's spirit, just like I said in the beginning. There's so many different ways to interpret that, and your way is perfect. It doesn't have to be my way. It doesn't have to be your neighbor's way. It doesn't have to be your mom's way. What that is for you can be totally different, but get very clear on what it is, how that looks, how it comes to you, and are you listening, and are you taking action? I hope this episode has helped you in the sense that you can do life a little bit differently. You can be more aware and more open to what's coming at you, and that you are being prompted. I mean, we have angels all around us. We have guardian angels. We have everything here to assist us to make better choices and to be able to prosper and be all that we can be. And I challenge you to get really clear on what that looks like and how that is for you. Again, I want to welcome you to our community if you've not been here in the past. And if you haven't gone and gotten the 7 traits, go right here to the bottom of the screen, allthingspossible.biz, and you can go get the 7 traits, the 7 videos, and see what a difference that can make in your life. We love having you here. Bill and I love our community, love our clientele, love our friends and our family that's here with us. And thank you for being here and being a part of this community. Have a good week. Hope this episode helped you, and we'll talk to you next time here on All Things Possible. Bye-bye.